Today is the day, U.S. deadline, the U.S. has given Canada to sign on to that new trade deal with Mexico. And one of the last sticking points appears to be Canadian dairy subsidies. To share his perspective on the trade conversation, we're joined by Ontario dairy farmer Andrew Campbell. He's joining us from London this morning. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, good morning, Anne-Marie. Thanks for having me.
We know that Mexico has agreed to some concessions in order to get this deal wrapped up for themselves. If Canada does agree to the same concessions and gives the U.S. more access to our market, where will that hurt your business the most?
Well, I think the big question that we have as dairy farmers is just how big is that concession? I think that's really what is going to have the biggest impact on us is, if it's 1 or 2% more access into the market versus higher numbers, obviously, it results in just lower income for each and every dairy farm in the country, including ours, because what we do with our system here in the country is we'll each take a little bit of a cut to make sure that the supply matches whatever the demand is in the country. So the big question we have is just what does that concession look like?
Yeah, well, we will find out later today if any have been made at all. When the U.S. was still part of the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership deal, the former Conservative government did concede to the U.S. They gave 3.25% of Canada's dairy market. Is there any figure that you are comfortable living with? Right now, it sits for Ontario at 3.25%, for the rest of the country, usually around 3%. Is there a number that you would be comfortable with?
Comfortable maybe isn't the right word, because the challenge we have is that, yes, we gave that up, that 3% up in the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and then when the U.S. left that agreement, we still gave up that 3% of the market to the other countries that are part of the agreement. So here now with NAFTA renegotiation, we're being asked to give up again, and if that's a case, for dairy farmers that we have to do that in order to make sure a deal is made. I don't think that any of us are really all that comfortable with it. And certainly the big question that we have then is what comes back as a response to that. In most of these agreements, we're asked to give up access, but we never get access in return. And I've yet to see the U.S., agree to give us more access into their market, which obviously hurts us as well.
If Canadians don't necessarily understand, all the ins and outs of the trade and of dairy producing, they certainly understand grocery shopping. So if we do give the U.S. more access, how does that affect consumers?
Well, I'm not sure that it necessarily does. I think one of the things that we've seen when, these systems are changed around the world, certainly, one of the last examples was in Europe as well as Australia. And what consumers saw in those places were, milk prices dropped a slight bit as soon as the deal was made. And then within 6 months, the prices were at what the level they were before. And then they continued to rise. The difference was that the farmer's price then dropped and continued to drop and dropped some more. So what we usually see is just that margin, the difference between what the farmers paid and what the consumer paid, just spreads more and more as all the folks in the middle of the line, pick up more of the profits.
Andrew, thanks for joining us so much this morning.
My pleasure, Anne-Marie. Thanks for having me.